Good morning. Again, this is your host, Danielle Hirschman. I am the host of a podcast, the Motivity Podcast. And, thank you all for listening. I know you guys listen on Apple Music or Spotify. So again, thanks for being a listener. We're really breaking down technology conversations. And we know that certain industries have, I would say, similar problems, and we're always trying to resolve these problems. One person I talk to a lot internally at Cisco, and happy that she's on the phone today, and you guys get to listen to her. Her name is Catherine Howe, but she is one of the people I go to a lot when I hear hospitals having problems and how do we drive for outcomes. So first of all, Catherine, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And so, guys, we're going to talk a little bit about her background. She has a wealth of knowledge, especially solving problems. And, what do we look at to solve those problems and how are we going about solving problems? But Catherine, how long have you been in technology industry? Give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. I have been in technology ever since I've been in business. So my academic background is actually biology, genomics. But I promptly went into healthcare technology. And so I've been really fortunate to be able to blend technology and applying technology into the healthcare industry. It's been many, many years. I've never been a practicing clinician, but I've been very, very close. I do advocacy for oncology patients, mostly GI oncologies. And I did spend a couple years in infectious disease with the lab coat on, doing some real research.
Wow,
Absolutely.
so you really understand what it's like to be a clinician, right? Or to be in that room and understand how to use and really see how technology has changed.
Yes, absolutely. And it's going so fast that none of us can keep up with it. My years in the lab coat were many years ago. And when I look at what I did there in terms of research and getting, statistically valid sample sizes, we could do it so much faster now. And there's so much data out there from around the world that we can gather. And so we're all really part of a world health system now, sharing data and fast tracking things, not having to reinvent things. It's a wonderful thing.
It really is. And, we hear how important that data is, right? As you said, getting it, early in your career was very hard. I mean, I would imagine you were going to textbooks and trying to look at information and people validating. And, I walked into college with a computer. I was kind of lucky because I had to kind of learn and adapt very easily how to find information. But in the healthcare world, it's so important. The data that the problems that they're solving for, just rely on that data so heavily that if the data is more accessible, like it's becoming, wow, how we're seeing this industry change. I mean, it is truly incredible. So now that, we're talking through data, how powerful is the data right now? How accessible is it? And maybe what are some of the, bottlenecks that you're seeing with the data? Because we're also hearing that getting to the data and having clean data is also a very important piece of it.
Yeah, well, there's a big connection between the consumerization of the healthcare industry and the data. And it may not be intuitively obvious, but when you make anything, you consumerize anything or make it commercial, it really means that you make it mass scale. You make it more consumable by more people. And in healthcare, if you think about it, the intellectual capital always resided in the brains of very few, very trained clinicians. And that was the gatekeeper, getting to the person who had that experience or that education, or that specialty. And so really consumerizing healthcare means getting that data out of a very few brains and into the machines. And when we get that data into the machines, then we can do more with it. Like we talked about, we can just share for research and fast track things, but we can now act on that data. We can search it, segment it, do predictive analytics against it. We can create 3D renderings of a real heart, for example. The Dassault Systems has done this, where you take millions of scans of an infant heart, and then when you take one scan of your patient at 2 days old who has a heart defect at birth, rather than scan that baby every single day because that brain or that heart is changing, you can actually predictively fast forward with all the images you have of fetal hearts and create a rendering of what that heart is going to look like day 3, day 5, day 10, saving cost, saving strain and exposure on the infant,
right.
and actually knowing something before, or having a high probability of knowing what's likely to happen on day 3 or day 4 of this infant's heart. And that kind of technology is one thing, but having the data, having all of, where are all those images of fetal hearts? How do we get them all into a shared database so that we can start acting on them and using them for the benefit of all?
We talk about it, right? And obviously the art of the possible is there, and we can do that. I couldn't imagine if I was a parent and that was my child, and how they would approach that. How would a doctor talk to me and say, hey, I'm going to look at technology and look at previous situations that that child was in and compare it to your child not having to take pictures and not having to make, my son or, daughter go back in for x-rays. But
right.
Depending on that 3D image, knowing I can predict what's going to happen, I would be blown away. I would feel so grateful if that was happening, right? But
well, and when you think,
yeah,
when you think about it,
when you
Danielle,
hear that story, though,
it's sort of a mind warp to think that technology is going to come into play on a little tiny 2-day-old or maybe even a preemie, and yet think about the implications of that in terms of accuracy, getting it right, survival rates, and not just 100%. The cost. We're all challenged with the background noise of trying to do things at lower cost and with fewer people. But think about that same concept in maybe a more simple scenario. Because I can look forward at the progression of a typical fetal or infant heart, what if I can look forward with simple things like somebody experiencing prediabetes? What's the most likely next thing that's going to happen, or the next symptom that they might surface? Or somebody who thinks they are having a heart attack or a stroke, and they might click or call to their healthcare provider. Well, one of the great things about consumerization is that now you don't have to have a cardiologist on the phone when they call in. You don't have to have a neurologist if they've had a headache for 3 days. You can have a really skilled contact center agent that at least knows how to ask the right questions. Why? Because we know if somebody's calling in, they've had a headache for 3 days, I need to ask them these questions. Have they recently had a fall? Have they been in an accident? Do they have a runny nose or fluid from the ears? Right? All of the other things that might indicate this is urgent, or this maybe can wait, or I need to, connect you immediately on a virtual visit with somebody who's a stroke specialist or what have you, or stop everything, I'm dispatching an ambulance to your home. Do I have the right address? But all of that can happen in a virtual environment with the right data being surfaced at the right time. Now, the promise of that is not just a better outcome for that patient, but you're doing it without tying up a neurologist or a cardiologist, right? Not yet, anyway. I don't want to say we don't need them, of course, but just being able to filter that patient to the right specialist and make the best use of a limited resource.
Right, as you say, it's the when, right? It's not the how. The cardiologist can come in. You're not saying that that's not the piece. It's but knowing when to bring the cardiologist in at the right time, I guess, based on the flow of information that customer is giving to that agent is just so important now. And,
so important.
I think of the Apple story a lot, because I think Apple and they made all these great computers and phones, and now they're going and trying to solve healthcare problems, right? It's so much more advanced that, we're wearing predictive analytics on our watches, or, all this information that they're gathering about us is important. And we never really looked at it this way, or with this lens. We always said, well, you go to the doctor and the doctor tells you what to do. And there's your script and send you on your way. And we're saying, no, no, no. You didn't actually have to go to that doctor's office. You could have had a conversation, or what you're saying is that specialist could have taken that call, walked through steps, and now there's more data on what you should do as a person, even, right? Even hearing that story, right? Well, then what do you mean I don't have to actually go to the doctor, right? That would be amazing a little bit, because,
if you think about the roadblocks of why you don't go to a doctor. Normally in this country, we channel through a primary care channel. So a GP, an internal medicine doctor, family medicine, whatever. And this is a very limited resource. This is actually the most overburdened of all the MD specialists. This is the most
I don't actually have a primary care anymore. So I kind of felt like, why did I need, I don't know, maybe I was a little bit more advanced in that. In my head, I was like, why can't I just kind of pick based on who I think is best? And I kind of got rid of my primary care of being the foothold to kind of like all my specialists. Like I never really understood that, to be honest. That was always something I just kind of.
Well, you are not the norm, because I know you, and you research everything. And when you show up to an ear, nose, and throat, or a derma, or whatever, you've done your homework. You know this is what you need. Most people don't, and or they get it wrong. And so the role of the primary care, primary care is a multidisciplinary function. It includes the system.
It's a generalist.
The doctor, I'm not talking about just the doctor, the primary care physician. I'm talking about primary care as a category function in the step of the care process. And it involves your prevention. It involves your vaccines and your mammograms, your colonoscopies, your flu shots. And it involves then clinicians who really are very well trained to look holistically at you. And in today's world, include lifestyle medicine. So not just say, okay, Danielle, I know that you've done your homework and you think you need a heart specialist, but could you tell me a little bit about your sleep patterns? Can you tell me a little bit about your nutrition, your exercise? Do you feel safe at home? What kind of stress are you under? This lifestyle medicine is now in the primary care bucket. And you think about, well, where's that coming from? It's coming from your Fitbit. It's coming from your Apple Watch. It's coming from your blood pressure cuff that we all have at home. Or during pandemic, we all got the little pulse oximeters. And I'm down to 93%. Should I come in? Tell me what else is going on. So we're all in the primary care business ourselves.
That's true. Well, I was going to say, that was a little bit of a predictive information. As we were all home with COVID, we knew that if we took that oxygen level and we hit a certain point, then we should go. And I don't even know, I guess it was out there on the internet that we all read, but again, that was someone putting out predictive information that you're now in the red zone. So talk to me, you talk about this lifestyle, right? And then we're lifestyle people. We have jobs, we work, but how are the hospitals, kind of helping that? Even those doctors are people, there's burnout, they're dealing with a lot, there's technology, right? What have you done kind of, to answer that and help hospitals work through that? Because we still need the doctors there at some point. And what we're seeing is they're, I don't want to say that they're mentally tired, but there's a lot being thrown at them, right? Like we get a lot, they must get much more than we do. And now you add data, technology, and now they're like, oh my God.
You had Danielle coming in with her own EKG that she did at home, right?
Here's my data, here's all my stuff, solve my problems. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, I have this report. And they're looking at me like I got 10 heads. But to that, yes, there's we're walking in with.
We're in the throes of really navigating through that. What data is necessary and valuable. And personally, one of the most important things about our own self-diagnosis and self-monitoring is just that, is that we are triggered, and patients will sense something's going on. Something's going on. I haven't felt right. And it's how long do you wait till that little intuition becomes an action and you walk into the ED or you click or call? And if we can shorten that time, and have the validation with the device. And the patient has the confidence to not say, oh, they're going to make fun of me. They're going to say, you were in 3 times last month, Danielle. If we can give you the confidence, yeah, but my device says it too. So therefore, and that kind of thing not only allows you to seek treatment earlier, which improves your outcome, but it increases your frequency of visit. Now, one of the things that we know is associated with better healthcare outcomes is frequency of visit. And in this country, we see a primary care physician, the data says, around 4 times a year on average.
Really? Okay.
And in other, and you may not, but don't think of primary care as going to the primary care doctor. Think of primary care. Do you seek primary care? Do you take a blood pressure reading? Or do you, consult a pharmacist or look on a symptom checker or WebMD on something? Do you seek primary care frequently? Other higher performing countries with different healthcare models are able to see primary care interactions 2 times that, 8 times a year, 9 times a year. Now, we flat out don't have enough doctors in this country compared to some other countries. We have about 2.6 medical doctors, MDs, per 1,000 people in this country. Other countries, again, have double that. And yet, we've got to increase our frequency and we've got to increase the early access to care. So how do we do that without adding to the burnout?
How do we do that?
Right.
Yeah.
We have to use technology and we have to use those really smart people on the phones in the contact center or the orchestration engine. And we got to give them the data to ask the right questions and make the right choices in the navigating of the care process. All right, so let's go back to burnout, because this is a huge problem in this country. And one of the things you touched on, are they tired and exhausted? Symptoms of burnout look like that. They look like people are short-fused, they're not friendly, your nurse isn't as, compassionate at the bedside, they're quick and, choppy, and they show symptoms of anxiety and exhaustion. And what happens is they make mistakes. That leads to mistakes. And it also leads to people just not coming in, calling in sick, or ultimately leaving the business altogether. So the symptoms are there that look like burnout. But when you talk to a nurse or a doctor, they don't like that. They don't like being told that, oh, you're just too tired. You don't have the energy anymore for the job.
Because
you're burnt out.
Right. It doesn't reflect on them positively. And you're not, I guess what you're saying is, no, we understand. But because they don't want to say, hey, I can't do this. This is what I signed up for, right? This is my training.
They say the opposite. They say, this is what I signed up for. I knew I was going to have a life of being exhausted and being called out at 2 a.m. What I'm feeling is more what we call moral injury, meaning I came to a career where I could help others, and I'm not able to do that right now. And yes, I'm exhausted and all those other symptoms, but really I'm not burnt out. I want to come back tomorrow. I just want to be able to do the job that I know I can do. So when we look at that, that burnout or moral injury, whichever we refer to it as, it is absolutely affecting the whole organization. It's not just the doctors and nurses, it's the people in the labs, it's the people in the cafeteria and the nutrition planning. Everybody is strained and showing those symptoms. So when you show those symptoms, or I show those symptoms, we show up and we get medical help. We go to behavioral health, psychiatry, psychology, and what we get is evidence-based medicine. We get trauma-informed care. We get perhaps medication to help us sleep or lower anxiety. So we have an evidence-based medical approach. But what we know now in the best practices in behavioral health is that evidence-based medicine alone isn't going to give you the best outcome. It's really a combination of that evidence-based approach plus something they call system change. So what that means is, if you're talking about a child who's getting bullied at school, well, you don't treat them, once a week or whatever in great therapy and then put them back in the bullying environment, right? Or a marriage issue, you don't put them back in that same, you try to change the system, the whole family system, if we're talking about teenagers. Well, for our staffs in healthcare, that system is their work environment. That's part
So
of what
how do you
causes
change
them
that?
the stress. And so in combination with evidence-based medicine, we want to change the system and create an environment that is conducive to wellness, right? And so that's where technology comes in again, is we're really good in corporate America at creating lifestyle, work style balance and blending things and bringing our pets into work, or, being able to have a kid pop up while you're on a video and right. Not so much in
record
healthcare.
my podcast at home and,
Exactly.
do all these wonderful things because technology is here. But I think to that, it's the workflows too, right? So these workflows that maybe were easier, to solve a little bit. Like the job function was very similar. Now you're taking this job function of the doctor or the nurse, and now we're like out of, we're on the other side of it. Because, computers, whatever, we're mobile, we're on the go. So it doesn't matter where we are. We can do our jobs anywhere.
We can.
We're not binded by the location. The location doesn't drive us.
We
aren't. Set up shop anywhere.
In corporate America. You and I work
right.
in technology, big corporate America, where we have that's a non-negotiable. You've got to, provide that to your employees. Healthcare America and corporate America are very different. And so healthcare America is just starting to learn about giving that kind of flexibility to staff, to nurses. And the technology is here now to let it happen. Whether it's just a nurse who's not on shift, who needs to join a meeting, her nurse director has called a meeting and you're not scheduled that day, do you have to miss the meeting? Are you able to really join seamlessly? Are you confident, or are you ashamed that maybe your kitchen's a mess? The reason you're off today is it's your cleaning day, and you don't want people to see that. So virtual backgrounds, simple things in technology become really important in terms of creating inclusivity and share a voice. So it's one thing to just give them the connectivity to join the meeting, but to have them lean in and voice what they're seeing, concerns, medical errors, or process improvements. That's what you want to get to, right?
Do you feel, though, that the doctor also needs to adapt a little bit? And I say that, and I kind of think of more of a stereotype. And in my head, you just said it. The doctor's nervous to show the kitchen, and they're just nervous to kind of show these pieces. In corporate America, we've shown it. This is what I look like. This is what I do. This is my home life. I think maybe also it's a little bit of a learning curve, or, familiar that you can do these things. It's okay. I think we put these doctors a little bit on a pedestal, and we do. They're the smartest people in our minds. They've worked so hard. They went to school for so many years, and they should look like this. In my head, it's a little bit, in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, I probably think that. Even when, I think my doctor gets on that virtual visit, in my mind, if they're younger than it's I kind of even judge a little bit, but not, not in a bad way. It's just,
you have a profile of what you expect. So think about that. If you do a virtual,
and they probably put pressure on themselves.
Oh, they do. They do, because there's a culture of being the answer person, being that, remember, the data's up here. You're coming to me because I'm going to have the answer somewhere up here. And I look the part, I act the part, I'm sterile, I'm pristine, I'm professional. Now, if you get on a virtual visit with your cardiologist and they're at home, and maybe they're
adorable, or she's adorable.
He or she is up in the mountains with their kids at spring break, but they take your call because you're important, and you get on a virtual call and they've got on a t-shirt and maybe sunglasses on their head or a baseball cap. That doesn't look like what you're used to. You want to see that white coat. They're not on vacation at home putting on their white coat, right? So there is a cultural thing to start to really let technology make that connection, and then present what you need to present from a content standpoint, right? In that same
and to your point, they're building these pieces in. You mentioned it, the virtual background. We're building more software into these devices or machines or whatever you're using, right? Any technology, there's there for enablement. I always think about that word. We are trying, and I say Cisco and other big, tech firms, are trying to make the technology easy to use and building functionality that's going to make that experience better. Like,
Yeah.
I guess I'm, and we talk about this, but rely on the technology. It can do it. Like, it won't break.
It can do
It can do it. I want to give it a little bit of vote of confidence. So what do companies do? What do hospitals do? How do they even start trying to solve this? Where would you recommend them start if a CIO is listening to this, or a CEO, and they know they are dealing with this? We know they all are, right?
Yeah.
Where do you even begin? How do you get teams working together? How do you even look at data? Where do you even go?
Well, for the staff, fatigue or burnout, moral injury, it's a comprehensive thing. It starts at the top with the chief people officer, chief nursing officer, and certainly the CIO or chief digital officer is going to come into play with the technology as solutions. The first thing with any kind of human trauma, anxiety, or wellness disorder is the evidence-based approach. They absolutely have to invoke one-on-one therapeutic measures to address their employees. And a lot of it is training their leaders to understand what trauma-informed is, nonviolent communication, inclusiveness. All of these things come from many of the startups in this space, Thrive, Better Up, Behavioral Fitness Today, all these companies that work on that side. And then your IT partners, you need to work with your IT partners and Cisco to really architect a new work environment that's hybrid, that lets people be at home or mobile, that's secure, and that also has additional features. Not just, I want to make sure everyone understands, not just connecting. So it's not just the network, right, but it's all the other stuff. Danielle, if you started speaking German to me right now, and I'm your doctor, what would I do? Right? I can turn on a translator and get a closed caption and understand what you're saying. Or I could dial in a third party to our session and translate. Okay. Or I could dial in your caregiver, right? Or your social worker, whatever it is. All of that flexibility means that my job is easier because I want to treat you if I'm a doctor. And being able to treat you means I got to understand you, translate it. I've got to get what you're telling me into the record, which is super easy if you're integrated like Cisco does with telehealth and the EHR. But I also want all the other people that need to know about this. Maybe it's your psychiatrist, your wellness coach, or your caregiver. I need everyone in this. And I can do that with technology. And I can go back to my kids' spring break, right? I can record.
You can record the call, you can send it out, you can get opinions, and now the data is flowing. So
yeah. So my job is easier, your outcome is hopefully better, and your experience is better. Yeah. And that is the promise of technology. We see it delivering on the promise every single day. We see the metrics moving, wait times getting reduced, length of stay in hospitals getting reduced, clinical outcomes, fewer penalties for readmissions and things that are indications of not getting it right the first time. So all of those metrics are getting impacted with the technology being implemented.
It's great. You're so passionate about this. And obviously I love talking about, solving problems for healthcare. It's very close to my heart as well. One thing you talked about though is expansion of teams, right? Expansion of not the doctor, but the person taking the call or the person doing the action, or get that patient journey before they get there and where they should go. Kind of give some advice to where you see that expanding and what that knowledge base really looks like, because I think that was a very key piece. We see the technology adapting, but the teams now need to adapt, and then we have the doctors too. But talk about the people that support the doctors a little bit more, because that's a pretty big piece. I know I kind of asked a big question, but
it is a big question because that phrase, it takes a village. It is a village that is navigating that patient from what we call sort of consumer-directed healthcare to clinically directed healthcare. And the world of consumer-directed healthcare is huge. For example, mom might have taken their child in to a CVS over the weekend because they twisted their ankle on the soccer field. Or maybe, she thinks she broke her arm, the daughter, and they run into CVS because there's a Minute Clinic And it's a lot better than dragging the 3 and 5-year-old along to the emergency room and they're starving and all of that. So they go there because it's easier. Well, suddenly they're part of the care team, right? Maybe this gal had a relationship with a provider organization. Now she kind of went off the grid, right? She went to another potential partner of that organization, got splinted and told that she could wait until Monday morning, make an appointment with a regular orthopedic or pediatrician. Oh, you don't know who that is? Let me give you one. So now suddenly that patient can be navigated away from their health provider to somebody else because of this interaction. We don't want that. We want everyone working together, like you're saying. Or even if that mom chose to call and do a virtual visit or what have you, all of those people need to come together to feed into the provider pathway. And so things that are digital first, digital front door, you've heard that term. It's all about making a digital first connection actually turn into part of the care journey. And so there's a lot of cultural change, a lot of system change on the provider side.
Yeah, it sounds like it because, I'm just thinking through, let's say that happened to me. I would love in my head to text the hospital. They should love to tell me where to go. Then whoever I talk to, the data could go back to the hospital. Then I would know what to do as the next step, right? Instead of what people do a lot is go to disparate systems that are really right now not talking to each other, sharing.
And a lot of why you would go somewhere else is convenience. So simple things like if you click to your normal provider organization and they said, oh, Danielle, I think it's best you bring your child into the emergency department. Well, you've got multiple other kids at home and dinner's about to be served and your partner isn't home yet. Well, simple things like, would you like an alert when you're about 20 minutes up? Or how long will it take you? Oh, it takes me 10 minutes to get to your emergency room. What if we ping you at 12 minutes so you can be ready to come in and just go straight in? That gives you time back, right? And prediction, planning. So now that is just as convenient as driving to maybe a CVS, a retail healthcare outlet where you also don't know your wait time. You might reach a line there and wish you would pick the other one on the other corner of town. So those kinds of technologies really help keep you in the community that's providing your service.
Yeah, it's amazing. Catherine, we're almost out of time, and I love this conversation. Why don't you just talk? I know we did talk about burnout. You mentioned she did write a white paper. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I did.
And where people could find it because, you have so much you have so much knowledge in the healthcare space and solving these problems.
Well, I'm really passionate about that one because we need everybody's wellness to be taken into account. There's data 100%. That shows 35% of clinicians used alcohol to ease their anxiety and their burnout during pandemic. Equal amounts, 25-35% use exercise, which is a good thing. And a smaller amount, 20-25% used junk food or, comfort food, which we don't want either. But the data shows that, these folks are looking for, self-soothing and self-treatment to lower their anxiety and their stress. And I did partner with a doctor of behavioral health, Dr. Allison Mayo, in the California market to put a white paper together that explains this dual path of evidence-based and system change. And my role, of course, was the system change, meaning the technology. And really what we know so far is that does stand to deliver the best, most sustainable outcome for wellness and eliminating or reducing burnout. So I'm on a mission to keep spreading the word. My white paper is available online, and we keep discovering more about this, how vast the problem is. And with a lot of the violence in the healthcare workplace, both from patients experiencing mental health issues as well as nefarious actors in the community, there's a lot of safety that needs to come into play to help also reduce the anxiety in all of the environment. So that's part of the system too, securing it from a physical security standpoint. So.
Yeah, it's a big system, and people are important, and we got to make sure people are safe and they're healthy, and whether that's the system providing it or you. Sounds like you have to be on top of a lot of things. It's funny. It makes you feel, like, oh, I could do better, right? And we should. We probably can be more proactive about our own personal health a little bit as you talk through that, right? Because
Absolutely.
we all have jobs and stress and handle it in many different ways, but we also need doctors. And as you said in the beginning, we don't, we have, I guess, 2.6 doctors to every 1,000 people. Is that what it was, right? And that's not the best statistic that we want to hear. So we're probably also solving for how do we get more doctors, in the seats. And it sounds like, us changing the patient flow and looking at more of data and analytics and technology can help us, but we all have to work together to solve these problems.
Fortunately, in this industry, we are all in it together. We all have a common set, our quintuple aim. We all have the same big picture in mind, providing an inclusive system for everybody.
Yeah. And, Cisco's at the forefront of that, as well as, these other big tech firms. Catherine, we're almost done for the day. And, you being on the podcast with me is an honor. So I appreciate you talking to me, especially because we do work in healthcare together. We're always trying to drive change, really look at where the bottlenecks are and help with predictive solutions instead of it being, hey, let's just change this outcome because of this, right? We kind of look at the data and I guess what we're seeing is that the data is really strong, and it could be stronger if you had more of it or if there was more touch points. So, I know there's a lot that these CIOs need to tackle. Any last words for an executive listening, maybe, where they would start or, any other advice? I know. Where do you start?
I work with a lot of you CIOs out there and CNOs and chief people officers. Just know that you're not navigating this alone. We have in my organization, Cisco's global healthcare team, we absolutely have put a lot of engineering, architects, experts into this problem, and we've developed methodologies that are proven and that work. So we absolutely know how to start dissecting, prioritizing. Do we prioritize the patient experience over the clinician experience? Do you have to do either or can you do both with the same set of platforms, just delivering on different values? And that's my personal preference, and I know that can work, and that's actually the right approach because they are so interconnected, the patient experience and the clinician experience, all underpinned with safety and security. And we have ways to help, you get started and architect that for the future. So lean in and use the people who have, blazed the path ahead so that you can minimize the rework.
Yeah, and to that point, lean into us. Like, we're advising, we can coach, we can help, with strategic initiatives. Right. And to Catherine's point, we can put a plan together. So we're not saying, hey, take it all, but you can start having initiatives per year that are big focuses. And I think one thing we're learning is that you need multiple team members inside your organization giving that insight. So it's not just a siloed approach anymore, because you need information from your security team, your network team, your infrastructure team, the CMOs, the marketing team, the people that manage the doctors, everyone across the continuum, because it is a big continuum and it's a journey, and the journey has a lot of touch points. So I think that's other piece of advice is get people in a room, put a workshop together, vet it out for 2 days, pull words down, words to the side, words up, whatever you think, however you want to,
we do a lot of that. And what we do a lot of is bringing, like you said, bringing together IT and nursing or emergency medicine or pharma, bringing these teams together to know that there's a lot of stuff already in place. Your CIO has invested in some technologies that maybe we just haven't turned on for your particular workflow. And that's a lot of the work that we do. We do those workshops so that you can re-engineer the workflow to use the digital touch points, capture the data, and constantly improve for the clinician and the patient.
Yeah. Well, this has been great, Catherine. I think we should have another session on the workshop, maybe give some insight into some of those strategies.
I would
maybe
be
we could
honored.
talk through that, because that would be so nice, right? That, the digital front door or digital transformation or kind of these bigger, I would say, initiatives. And then we could kind of break down some of those initiatives and talk through them and why they are important and why you should maybe have them on your strategic report for the next year.
Would love to do that, and would welcome any of your audience members in the healthcare business that want to join us or have something to share. Would welcome them to join us in that conversation.
Yeah, well, this has been great. Again, this is, an honor to have you on. Again, this is Danielle with the Motivity Podcast. Thank you for listening. Any last words, Catherine?
No, keep doing what you're doing out there, all of you.
We're trying, giving good advice. That's what it's about. And helping people understand technology and what they're truly buying and what it's ready for. So like, Catherine said, talk to your infrastructure team, talk to your CIO. He probably has a lot of tools, and we could turn on those tools to give you better outcomes. So, and that's what we drive for here. So thank you, and have a wonderful day, everyone.